Welcome back to the Nerdrotic channel. My name is Gary Beekler. I am live in San Francisco, California, and I come to you from nerdrotic.com. And in parts unknown is my wonderful and talented co-host Susan Layton of 1428elm.com. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I am so down to discuss this episode.
I am so excited, and we're discussing Ancient Aliens. Unfortunately, it's the season finale. It's episode 8 of season 13. I don't know how you could have 13 seasons of a show that's actually only been on for 7 years, but who cares? Who's counting? And this Susan, we had a conversation about this, and I hit my head like really hard. I was like, how could we have not been covering this show? I mean, like, I don't know why we never covered this show. So we will be covering it in the future. And thank you for joining me, Susan. So I'm not doing this all alone. I really appreciate
my
it.
pleasure. My pleasure.
That is great. That is great. So tonight's finale was on a subject that I absolutely love. And before I get started, I guess, is there spoilers for an Ancient Aliens episode? So I'll put up my spoiler sign just in case.
Yeah, just
spoilers. Spoilers. It was aliens. No. And we'll get to you guys in the chat. This is going to be a short one because we have a much longer podcast to be doing afterwards if you're watching us live. But we will get to some of your chat, and thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I see Mary Ashmead and Random Gamer User and Perch and Scribe and Mako and wonderful people. So overall, what did you think of tonight's episode, and more importantly, tonight's subject?
I thought it was very fascinating. I've always been interested in the Nephilim and that whole concept of the Watchers coming to Earth, mating with human women to create the race of giants. And I thought tonight was very interesting, the way that they went about correlating all the different information they've amassed from different countries, such as Malta and Greece, to Sardinia, where they were. And I just thought it was a very interesting show that brought up a lot of good questions.
And that's the great thing about this show. And I saw Dr. Robert Schock, or Professor, I think it was Dr. Robert Schock. He's the geologist from
Right.
Boston. Bring up the fact that, Ancient Aliens has brought a whole new crowd into it's beyond the alien thing. It's really getting into megalithic structures, ancient civilizations, the possibly pre-Diluvian civilizations. It's got a lot more people, including myself, interested in this subject. So if you don't even fully believe in the alien theory, they really do bring up solid questions just about the stone structures. Like, how did they do this? And what was the co-host from Oak Island again? What was his name?
Marty Lagina.
Marty brought up something that was really important that David Hatcher Childress brings us up too. Sorry, it's a bad impression of David Hatcher Childress. But what they bring up is a solid question, which is, okay, so, archaeologists say that, slaves or a lot of people built these structures. You have to have a lot of motivated people being able to work all the time. They can't all be slaves. A lot of these places are very remote. We're talking an island here. So we were at the island of Sardinia, and it's an island. So there's 10,000 people on it, 20,000 maybe at tops, doing all those work. And they said there was thousands of those towers, thousands of them. And each one of those blocks was 6 to 12 tons.
Right.
The one archaeologist said. So just the motivation factor behind that. Why would you do that? And what David Hatcher Childress had brought up in previous episodes is this had to be easy. It had to be for them to do this, and even Marty brought it up. Like, even when you're putting these towers together, like, you have to feed everybody, motivate everybody, not be attacked. So it's really, really strange. Whether you're a believer or not, it's bizarre. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, the fact that these structures, it's not isolated. The locations are isolated from one another, and when you look, there is definitely a pattern. You have the Naragi, which is the tower, I believe, and then you have the Ziggurat pyramid. which, if anybody knows ancient Sumerian culture, Babylonian, that was a very popular structure. It's like a step pyramid. They found that on Sardinia. They found similar structures in Greece and Malta. And these locations, they didn't have the internet back then. So word of mouth was probably not the way that this happened, because it was too remote. So you have to look at all these correlations and wonder what happened. And I was having a debate this evening about that, where, Giorgio isn't really rooted in science. He has sound logic, but not science. And in a way, when you look at it, you have to wonder, was there a race of intelligent humans that went from place to place imparting their knowledge on architecture and astronomy? Because if you remember, the well of Christiana, I believe, the place, it was a well that was constructed without mortar, and its sole purpose was to look at the lunar phenomenon that occurs every 18.6 years, where the moon is at its highest point and it stays stationary for several hours. Why on earth would you create a structure just for that? I mean,
Every
these are the kind of
18.6
questions.
years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then that's where I have to wonder, okay, logically, was it a race of humans that were super intelligent, or did they get guidance from something else? That's what you have to look at, and that's what this show was kind of forcing you to take a look at.
Yeah, even Marty said, that this either something or someone's had a lot of knowledge. Here's a picture of the inside of that well. Sorry, it's not very big, but it's almost a perfect circle in there. And this was done by people who didn't have the wheel, uh maybe bronze tools, maybe at that point. What Giorgio likes to say is they had chicken bones. They probably didn't have chicken bones, but and like you said, they had a great knowledge of of astrology, of astronomy, and they, knowing where they, episode after episode after episode. Graham Hancock is really good at pointing this out, and Robert Paval, that and the more, because of the internet and because we're being able to compare stories, I'm finding out, like, more and more. I didn't know anything about this well until today. This is the first time I've ever heard of it, and I'm finding out stuff. The pyramid, a pyramid in Europe, on an island. There's so many similarities, and they're all based on the stars. And how did they know this? Even, okay, say if it wasn't aliens, how did they know? And we're finding a lot of these similarities, and I find it, like, just really interesting. It's and no, Giorgio is not based in science. I somewhat know Giorgio. I've spent some time with him. I wouldn't say we're not best buds. We don't hang out every day. We spent some time together a few years ago. I helped light, my friend Kat did a film project for the film class that we were both in, and he did an interview of Giorgio, which came before Ancient Aliens. And I don't know if Giorgio used this in his reel or had this in mind anyway, or wanted this as test footage. I don't know what happened to it, but I helped light the interview, right? And it's on my reel, which I'll link to when this turns into a video. And I got to meet Giorgio, spend a couple days with him. He lived with my friend Kat. We corresponded sometimes. I just saw him last year at Contact in the Desert. We chatted. It was good to see him. He's a cool dude. He's no scientist, though, but neither was Graham Hancock, and neither is Randall Carlson. But if you listen to both of these guys, I think it's beyond scientists with these guys. They're obsessed. They're absolutely insanely obsessed with this. Like, Giorgio is not an act with him. Okay. Like, he does this shit. Now, he did a lot of traveling when he was a kid. His parents, I think, were pretty well off, and he traveled the world, and that's what and he became Eric von Daniken's protege.
Right.
And that's what led to all this. But where Giorgio is not based in science, what, again, I'm going to talk about Robert Schoch. He brought up a very good point, that science these days, and Robert Schoch's an academic. saying this. He says a lot of science is specialized and there's not a lot of crossover. And that's why, like, an Egyptologist wouldn't understand or didn't really get the erosion thing around the Sphinx. So what's happening is we're having to rely on reporters and upset, like Randall Carlson's like an insane dude who dropped a bunch of acid and started looking at the ground and tripping on it and became like one of the best geologists that's not credited ever. He's nuts. And the whole point of this is to be curious, and it's nice to see that there is something fantastic out there, and there are a lot of mysteries in history, even if they are like, eventually based in science and not involving aliens. I know, but I am a believer, obviously. I mean, my shirt says so, Susan. Susan,
and when you think about it, because I was just thinking about this, a lot of these structures, especially in Egypt, the pyramids are all built with Orion's belt in mind. And when you line up the structures of the Great Pyramids with Orion's belt, you can clearly see the correlation. Tonight, with these different structures that they were finding, the correlation was with Pleiades.
Yeah.
And the discussion that I was in tonight was about, well, these are the brightest stars in the night sky. And in ancient times, when you didn't have light pollution and you could look up into the heavens, these were the stars that you could see. So logically, you would think, if you were a primitive person, maybe we came from there. Maybe there's a special significance because these stars are so bright, which does make sense. But I also like to look at the other side, and some might say the crazy side of, well, how did they know these specific constellations? How did the ancient Egyptians know to align the pyramids exactly with Orion's belt? How did the ancient Sardinians, how did they understand the Pleiades? It's little things like this, that you just kind of go, it makes your mind move and think about all the abilities that could exist with, all these different structures and the information, and the fact that they were going to actually examine bones of giants. Because apparently at archaeological digs on Sardinia, they found bones of 8-foot and 9-foot people. But they mysteriously disappear, and they were supposed to see, Marty and Giorgio were supposed to see these bones, and then the promise was reneged, which is very, very interesting. Now, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I find it intriguing.
I do too. And we hear that. Okay, so these stories there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these stories from a lot from America. A lot of them were thought to be just shysters and snake oil salesmen and all that crap, and that probably was. But there's so many of them out there where the bones disappeared and it's a Smithsonian conspiracy. That I don't know. That's why I was kind of missing Jim Vieira, our boy Jim Vieira, from who does the American Giants thing and did a whole show on it. And I love that guy. I love his accent. And that guy's done a lot of real research. Again, not based in science. It's a stonemason. But you're finding these people to be, like Jim Vieira is not like, he's not a woo-woo guy. If you talk to him, like, he's a really like a blue collar guy who just got obsessed. Again, there's another obsessed person. And that's what we got to kind of rely on, because I don't think science is asking the right questions. It's funny you bring up the giants. Okay. So, and the whole story is like maybe a cyclops lived on that island, or, the myth, or the giants, they had giant tombs, but the giants didn't live in the tombs. They're buried under them.
Right.
And then there was the similarities. I'll bring up a picture here with you talked about Sumeria before, and there's these giant statues that are 8 to 9 feet tall, and they have like the circle eyes like C-3PO, like Giorgio said. That's very similar to, and Giorgio brought this up, to some statues that they have in Sumeria. So there was a possibility that maybe they came down and they were part of the civilization started there, but we don't know how old these stones are. That's part of the problem. You know, all the dating that comes is from stuff we find in and around the stone. So I think it's a pretty good argument that a lot of this stuff is way older than we think it is. But here's a picture of one of those statues, and they're weird looking. They're definitely weird looking, and they have the big circular eyes. And you spoke of the commonalities. There's so many weird like the feathered serpent. It wasn't brought up in this show, but I was watching actually a Graham Hancock video earlier, and the feathered serpent shows up like everywhere. You know, it's a multi-headed serpent that's feathered, and it's they think maybe it came from a comet or something. I don't know. There's definitely something weird going on though. But that's what I love about the show, you know. And I love also, I mean, by the way, we got a super chat. Tinfoil hat is an effective shield against Doomcock's latest weapon of mass destruction. Hint 1947 cough Roswell. I went to Roswell last year, Dakota. Thank you for the 1947 super chat. That's awesome. We also got a $10 super chat. Have a great time tonight. Nerdrotic says Artemis over easy. Awesome. Thank you so much,
Artemis.
We'll get to the chat in just a second here. Okay, so giants. Let's just get to the fact with giants. Do you think giants existed, Susan?
You know, I have to think about this, because when I looked at the statue that you have, that you've shown, and then they made the correlation to C-3PO, which just made me laugh.
Oh, yeah.
When I looked at that immediately, and I don't know why, I thought Klaatu, Narada, Verada, Nictu, and I just saw the whole day the earth stood still scenario. But when I think about giants and beings that are 8 feet, 9 feet tall, I know that we have had people on this earth that are that tall. We have very tall basketball players. You know, most of them are 7 foot. I don't think it's impossible. I would have to see proof on that. And the idea of the Nephilim, it's interesting, but I'd almost like to say, if the hybridization did occur between extraterrestrials and human women, I would think that the offspring may not have been giants, but because they were stronger, different in appearance, probably taller than the average human, not 8 foot or 9 foot tall, that's what they appeared to be. That's my personal belief.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I need to see that one to believe it, but I like you. I have a totally open mind when it comes to this stuff. We know so little about the world. We have only been on we humans have only been on this planet for like a nanosecond of time. We're supposedly 200,000 year old roughly, but we've only been advanced. Like, what have we been? We've been basically dicking around for 180,000 years. I find that hard to believe. Either something kicked us into consciousness, either some trauma, like a cataclysm, and like forced us to evolve faster, or something else happened. I don't know. But there was I think we probably would have dug something up. But remember, the only thing archaeologists know to base anything on is if a human is fossilized or they find some bones, and that's a rare thing. You have to like basically die in mud, and otherwise, most human beings, especially back then, died and got picked apart by animals. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say if there was other races. We don't know. We don't know a lot more than we know. That's why I think it's really funny that sometimes you'll see in the New Yorker or something like that is like, has science solved all the mysteries? It's like, yeah, you're funny. Cute monkey. There you go. I was just showing a picture, another one of those. And some of the stonework, there's some of the really, really, one of the commonalities with Ancient Aliens and Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson is when they talk about the megalithic stuff, the older stuff is always better. It's always better made. It's bigger, and there's no explanation for it. And they might figure it out someday. But but as far as giants, I definitely need to see a big old bone. Now, supposedly David Hatcher Childress, like 4 or 5 seasons ago, held a giant skull. It was a big skull. But it could have just been a big human. I mean, my son is giant. My son is 6'6". So
yeah.
I can still kick his ass though.
Well, Mako brings up an interesting point in the chat about about the fact that sometimes the ancient peoples created things to look like they were giants for battle purposes, to look more imposing to outside entities that might want to come and do them harm or destroy what they've built. So that's also a very plausible explanation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Persian Scribe, you're right. Giorgio certainly suffers from confirmation bias. That's what Ancient Aliens is. That's how they've gotten 13 episodes or 13 seasons. But his passion is admirable, and that is never lacking with that guy. Just from what I've met with him, and always, and a super nice guy, and a super. You know what? I've sent out a message to see if I can get him on the show. I'd like to very much get him on the show. It's a possibility, I wanted to wait till the season was over, and he's probably going to be shooting pretty soon. I think they're probably going to get another season. This thing's a moneymaker for him.
Yeah.
So let's go over some chat real quick, and then we're going to have to end this and then start the Friday night podcast, which was going to be like, we were kind of wondering if we were going to have enough news, and turns out
no,
we're going to have
we have news.
Yeah, I definitely, Mary, that 18.6 year thing is really weird. Cause other than the moon, for harvesting her, like, what's the point of that?
Right.
And Persian Scribe, I love Brian Forrester. He is a lunatic, and I love him. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his videos. He lives in Peru, and he's another guy. He's not a scientist, but he's I can't think of another somebody with more expertise, who's white Anglo, with the Paracas people, and the elongated skulls, and those are weird.
Well, they have a structure over there that they did an entire show on, where it's blocks of H's. That's what it looks like.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They couldn't determine if it was a structure to a palace or some fortress. And then somebody who was an aeronautical engineer said, I know what this could be. And he built his own landing strip and takeoff strip, interlocking those H's together. And then he took I think it's the Mayan airplane or the Colombian airplane, that Giorgio has a pin of, and he actually took it and flew it off this runway. And he said that that's possibly one theory. But when you look at it, the stones, and I forget the gentleman's name. His name's Christopher Dunn. Christopher
Dunn, yeah, who is a machinist and a freaking genius engineer.
He went over there and he took a look at the structures, and he's like, there's no way that the ancient peoples could have taken their tools and with this much precision created those monoliths there. And they still don't know what this area was used for. Of course, they hypothesized that it was a landing strip for extraterrestrials, but it's just a very interesting piece of property over there in South America that's unexplained, just like what they were looking at in Sardinia.
Yeah, and I've got some pictures up of those H blocks. Right. That's Pumapunka, Bolivia, by the way. And that's yeah. Giorgio told me that that was what made him a believer, was going there. I remember this story because I remember, I was talking to him, and I didn't know when I first met him. I had no idea he was who he was. All right, I just he was a guy. This is before he had a ton of money. Okay, and he was just doing his magazine by subscription, and he lived on a mattress that didn't have a box spring. I'll never forget it. And it was surrounded by books and candles, and so Kat just our mutual friend like talked about UFOs. I'm like, oh, I totally believe her. And we started talking. I had no idea who he was, what he did. He was friends with. He's like, yeah, I'm friends with Eric von Daniken. I'm like, shut the front door. No, you're not. And yeah, it was really cool. So but he told me the story like that. This place was the weirdest single thing that he had ever seen, and he's been everywhere. So yeah, we'll do a couple more chat and wrap it up. Also, like he gave me, this is funny. He gave me this when I went to Contact in the Desert. I was like, that's awesome. That's the little Mayan and a rocket ship thing. So,
oh yeah,
yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's do a couple more chats and then we'll scatter on. And sorry we couldn't get to more, but like definitely if you have to ask us a question, just copy and paste it and bring it on over to the Friday night show. Want to make sure we didn't miss that. Okay. The statue face looked like a wide-eyed guy wearing an armored helmet. Yeah, it looked like a surprised warrior, maybe. And aliens have manipulated human DNA for nefarious plans. Well, Zachariah Ascension thinks it was to mine gold. Gold, I love gold. That's so weird.
Right. Well, the Anunnaki supposedly created us for slave purposes.
Yeah, that was it. And Persian Scribe, you're right. Peru is still largely an unfolding story as so much is still being discovered in a dense jungle. Yeah, they have no fucking. That's why, like, we're really at the early times of us really being able to communicate with each other. And we're starting to like compare notes a lot easier now. And we're finding out like, oh, this is really weird. And there was a lot of commonality. And these people did meet each other. There's pyramids everywhere. There's pyramids fucking everywhere. They're finding out. The ones in China aren't even excavated. They leave them alone. No. They don't care. I found out today again through watching an old Graham Hancock video that there's a bunch of battered pyramids in Nazca. Like Nazca has a bunch of destroyed pyramids, and a lot of this stuff, you know, the weirdest things is all the stuff they keep finding either underwater or buried in sediment. Like if you go to Easter Island, you see the big old statues. Right. Half of them are buried up to here, and they're tipped over like there was a lot of water or something, and they got caught up in it like a flood. And you know, Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock both say that the reason, part of the reason a lot of geologists tried to get away from the flood theory is because it's biblical. All right, they really want to stay away from anything biblical. So, yeah. And that's fine. You could have a flood theory without being biblical. Okay, there's there's a way to do both. So, just like an Alien versus Predator, that's it. It's Alien versus Predator.
Well, in Japan, under the water, it's funny you mentioned structures under the water. The Sea of Japan has this huge monolithic structure. And people have, you know, the people that have gone to see it, they believe it's architecture. Then you'll get the geologists and the marine biologists who are like, no, it's naturally formed. It's a natural form, just like what people think in Bermuda, the stones are actually Atlantis. And people are like, no. Yeah, the Bimini Wall. It's been there forever.
Yep. And there's that thing in Japan. That's pretty, I don't know, man. I mean,
that looks like a structure to me. Yeah. I mean, it just does. It doesn't look like something that is naturally occurring.
Right. Okay. So we can carry on this conversation at the Friday Night Tights podcast. Ancient Alien fans, if you're over here thinking you're going to actually see an episode of Ancient Aliens, we don't do that here. Okay. We talk about the episodes. But welcome. And Giorgio, if you're watching, dude, come on the show. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I added him on Twitter. I doubt he's going to see it. He's a busy guy. He's a busy guy these days, but love him. And you guys in the chat are awesome. Sorry we couldn't get to you more. We kind of had to rush this one. But when Ancient Aliens comes back, we'll do longer episodes where we can interact. And please bring your questions over to Friday night. Susan and I will ask them or answer them there, not ask them. Sure. You're going to ask the questions, of course. Oh my God, we could do a 3-hour podcast on this easily, just on Peru alone, just on Peru. Yeah, that Japanese thing looks like a structure. Now the Bimini Wall, I'll give that to the scientists. I'm not sure on that one, even though Edgar Casey did pretty much predict when we would discover it, and it was pretty close. But
That's an entire show. Edgar Cayce.
Edgar Casey's hell yeah. 1-900 Susan. That's right, Bad Bunny. That's coming up. So yeah, and yes, there was plant life in Antarctica. Nihilus Shadow. They found it. That's a fact.
And they also think, because I saw someone in the chat say, wait till they find pyramids in Antarctica. They already believe that they've seen one.
Yeah. And Antarctica, a lot of it's covered in like mild, thick ice. So yeah, who knows what they're gonna find? Who knows? After the polar shift, things got a little fucked up. So hey, Persian Scribe, you're welcome. This is our pleasure covering this stuff. This stuff rocks. I love it. Because nobody wants life to be mundane. All right. Now I think people argue that if you look hard enough, you can find amazing stuff everywhere. But this stuff's pretty cool. All right. It makes you question stuff. I'm not saying it's real. Come to your own conclusions. What's up, Ed Brewer? How's it going? And Random and all you guys out there, how's your father? We'll see you in a few minutes. Susan, any final words?
Nope, just follow us over to Friday Night Tights and we'll continue the conversation with much more news.
Yes. And yes, James, the new stream will be on this channel, only on the Nerderotic channel. It'll be up in about 5 minutes. Give us like 10 minutes. We'll be ready. Oh, hey, I just got my notification and I'm live right now. Right where we're going to end it. That's hilarious. Okay. Doors and corners, everybody. Say goodnight, Susan.
Good night, Susan.
I like that. May the small folks sing songs of your greatness. I want to believe.